So now that we did practice how you can use ChatGPT without or with only minimal programming experience, it's of course also time to practice how you can use it with programming experience. And for that, we're going to build a REST API with ChatGPT. And therefore, this and the next videos do require programming experience. Because we're not going to start at 0, instead we're going to send prompts to ChatGPT that contain instructions and questions that require programming experience to come up with them. We're not going to tell ChatGPT to just build us an example application. Instead, we'll have highly specific prompts and questions to build individual application building blocks, just as you learned it earlier in this course. This is a highly efficient way of leveraging ChatGPT for building applications with programming experience, so as a developer, and that's therefore the approach we're going to use now. Nonetheless, even if you have no programming experience, watching this and the next videos might still be interesting to get an idea of how powerful ChatGPT can be if you do have that knowledge and how you could use ChatGPT with that knowledge. Now, as mentioned, we're going to build a REST API, specifically a Node.js REST API, and in case this doesn't tell you anything, this and the next videos probably isn't for you, but nonetheless, in case this doesn't tell you anything, Node.js is kind of like a programming language, you could say. Actually, it's using JavaScript as a programming language, but Node.js is a runtime that allows us to run JavaScript outside of the browser. And in order to build and run a Node.js application, you therefore must install Node.js on your system. It is available for all operating systems and platforms, and if you visit nodejs.org, you can download the LTS or this very latest version there. Of course, the versions might differ at the point of time you're watching this, but simply download your LTS version, so whatever is displayed for you here, and you're fine. It should automatically pick your operating system. If it doesn't, you can click on Other Downloads and manually pick the installer for your version, for your operating system. And then you simply go through that installer, which you can download here, and this will install Node.js on your system. So that's Node.js. A REST API, in the end, is a website without any visible pages. Instead, it's just about providing some URLs to which users or applications can send requests to exchange data. REST APIs are often used behind the scenes by mobile apps, for example, where the mobile app provides the visual user interface and behind the scenes talks to such a REST API to exchange data. Now we're going to build a Meetups REST API here in this section. And this Meetups REST API, which we are going to build, will be relatively simple, but nonetheless contain some crucial features which you will very likely encounter in any REST API you might be building. Now, this REST API we are about to build, or which I want you to build, should have 4 main endpoints. It should have a post/meetups endpoint, so a /meetups URL endpoint that accepts post requests, which would be used to create a new meetup. So which accepts incoming user data to then create and store a new meetup. And post requests are simply one kind of officially supported HTTP request types, so to say. In addition to this post/meetups route, the API also should support a get/meetups route, which would be used to fetch those stored meetups. And we also want to have a patch and delete /meetups/ID route, which updates an existing meetup by ID or deletes an existing meetup by ID. And the ID here will actually be a dynamic segment, since different meetups will have different IDs and they should be targetable by including their IDs in the URLs, so in this /meetups/ID path. Again, if this doesn't tell you anything, It might still be interesting to watch these videos, but you should definitely gain this basic programming and web development knowledge before trying this task on your own. So these are the endpoints this REST API should have. And every meetup that's going to get created in that post route, or that's going to be fetched as part of the whole list of meetups in the get route, should have a title, a summary, an address, and an ID. So these data points should make up a meetup. And title, summary, and address are simple short pieces of text. The ID could be a number or text. That's totally up to you. All that meetup data should then be stored in a meetups.json file inside of the project. In reality, you might be using a database, but to keep this demo simple and make it not too complex, we'll just use a meetups.json file. And all the incoming data that's about to be stored should be validated before being stored. So you should, for example, have some logic that makes sure that the title and the summary and the address are not empty, so that there is some text in these fields, that the user did submit some data. In addition, JSON should be used as a data format, not just for storing these meetups in this meetups.json file, but also for sending them back in a response to these incoming requests. And that's the basic definition for this example REST API here. That is the kind of REST API we will build over the next lectures. Now, just as before with the example for people without programming experience, I then also got some enhancements for you. For example, once you've finished that basic REST API, you should add authentication to it, so that you have two additional routes, /signup and /login, which both accept post requests, which are used to create users and log users in, and users should simply be defined as a combination of an email and a password. The authentication should be JWT based, so JSON Web Token based. And once the authentication routes have been added, you should then also add logic to protect all other routes except for get meetups, so that only authenticated requests, so requests sent by users who did log in, are allowed to those other routes, so to the post, patch, and delete routes. These three routes should be protected once you added authentication. And again, if this all doesn't tell you anything because you got no programming experience or maybe simply no web development experience, simply feel free to just watch the videos to see how such an application could be built with ChatGPT. Another enhancement which I have for you is to add error handling, which simply means that in different parts of the REST API, you should make sure that errors are thrown. For example, if user input validation fails, or if a user tries to access a protected route without being authenticated. And you should set up a generic error handling middleware as part of your REST API, so some general error handling function that is triggered whenever an error is thrown anywhere in the application. And that middleware should then send back error responses with appropriate response status codes. For example, a 401 status code if the problem is that a user tried to access a protected route without being authenticated. These are the enhancements, but of course, just as before, definitely first start with this basic application, this basic REST API here, and definitely try building this on your own first, before you then take a look at my solution, which I will show you over the next lectures. Also, as mentioned before, of course, your solution and the prompts you're going to use will very likely differ from my solution and my prompts. And that's absolutely fine, because this entire course and this section especially here is simply just about getting some hands-on experience with ChatGPT. So the solution I'm going to show you will just be one possible solution and not the only correct solution. That's really important to keep in mind.